Hello, my darlings. This is Grandma Judy. I know a lot of people have written me and wanted to know, Grandma, what are some books that I could use for my kids? So I'm going to let you know some books that you could use for your kids. Let me turn off the, I cover up the thing. Okay, there you go. Here's some books that you could use for your children. The guy name is Roger Hargreaves. Hargreaves. My kindergartners loved it all the way up to about third grade. And then, surprisingly, some of my middle school kids enjoyed it. So you can order these books. And guess what else I found out? If you would put Roger Hargreaves' name in YouTube, there's his books there. And there are people reading them to you also. So that's a good thing to put the grandchildren on when they're visiting you. He makes Little Miss Naughty, and he makes Little Mister, because whenever I read about, each day I would read about a Miss, and the next day I'd read about a Mister, because the boys didn't want to hear about Miss, and the girls didn't want to hear about Mister. But what it is personality traits that people have, and at this little age we try to teach them about them. So, without going on, you can turn to the back of the book, any one that you buy, and it will be all the different books about it. Here's Mr. Greedy. Here's Little Miss Trouble. Here's Little Miss Busy. Here's Mr. Small. Here's Mr. Clumsy. Here's Mr. Skinny. Here's Little Miss Fun. Here's Mr. Rush. I take these books with me when I go to the schools, and I let the kids read them themselves, the ones who can read, and then I also read a story to them. Mr. Perfect. You know how there are people who are perfect. Mr. Tall. Little Miss Helpful. And whatever the title is, Roger, I think he passed. His wife is running it. I think he just celebrated his 76th birthday. But you can look all that up. Little Miss Tiny. Little Miss Giggles. Giggles, giggles, giggles. Little Miss Curious. Little Miss Scatterbrain. Little Miss Neat. Mr. Slow. Mr. Daydream. Mr. Happy. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody was just as happy as Mr. Happy? Little Miss Brainy. And mostly all these people, we have known people with who act just the way these kids act in the book. Little Miss Wise. Mr. Tickle. Little Miss Contrary. Little Miss Chatterbox. Mr. Strong. Mr. Forgetful. So today, as a good surprise for you, my lovies, I will read a story to you. This one's called Little Miss Contrary. Little Miss Contrary. So it's kind of hard. You would think I would have gotten better, but I haven't. Little Miss Contrary. Let's see. Little Miss Contrary. Little Miss Contrary. Little Miss Contrary always did the opposite of what you think she would do. For instance, if you asked her to switch on the television, she would switch on the light. For example, if you asked her the time, she would tell you the date. And she always said the opposite of what she really meant. Mind you, it wasn't exactly her fault. It was probably because she lived in a place called Muddle Land, where everything is so mixed up and muddled, you don't know whether you're coming or going. Or going or coming. as they say in Muddle Land. It's a very strange place indeed. The worms don't live in holes in Muddle Land. They live in trees. See there? The worms living in trees. And the birds live in holes. And if you want a loaf of bread, you don't go to the baker's. You go to the butcher's. The baker sells bananas. One morning, little Miss Contrary was having breakfast, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. There was a knock on the door. Little Miss Contrary didn't hear it at first, because it was more of a tap than a knock. Tap, tap, tap. But she did hear it eventually, and went to see who it was. See, she's sitting here eating her little food, and she went to see who it was. She opened the door. "Hello," said a little voice. Little Miss Contrary looked down, and down again, and there stood Mr. Small. See, there's Mr. Small standing there. He raised his hat. "Hello," he said again. "Goodbye," smiled little Miss Contrary. Mr. Small looked puzzled, as well as he might. "I wonder if you can help me," he asked. Little Miss Contrary smiled. "Of course I can't," she said. "Oh dear," said Mr. Small. "You see, I'm lost." "Well," she said, "nice to meet you, Mr. Lost." "No, no," said Mr. Small. "I'm trying to find someone called Little Miss Contrary." "That's you?" laughed little Miss Contrary. "I have a letter for her," said Mr. Small. "Oh, bad." There's Mr. Small. He's got a letter for her. "Oh, bad," she said. "I don't get any telephone calls." "I think I'll go," said the confused Mr. Small. "Goodbye." "Hello," said Miss Contrary, and she shut the door. Mr. Small went home shaking his head. The letter was from Mr. Happy, inviting little Miss Contrary to his birthday party. Mr. Happy had never met little Miss Contrary, but he had heard about her and thought it would be nice to have her at his party. The invitation was for 3 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of March. At 2 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of March, little Miss, there she is, little Miss Contrary, went over to Mr. Happy's house. She knocked on his door. "Merry Christmas," said little Miss Contrary, and thrust a package into Mr. Happy's hand. Mr. Happy was puzzled. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm Little Miss Sunshine," replied little Miss Contrary. "No, you're not," said Mr. Happy. "I know little Miss Sunshine, and she's not a bit like you." Then he stopped and thought. "Oh," he smiled. "I know who you really are. You're little Miss Contrary, aren't you? I heard you always say and do the opposite of what you mean." "You better come in," said Mr. Happy. "No, thank you," smiled little Miss Contrary. Mr. Happy led her into his living room. "What a horrible room," she said. Mr. Happy grinned. He was beginning to realize that everything he had heard about little Miss Contrary was true. "Would you like a cup of tea?" he asked. "I can't think of anything I'd like less," said Miss Contrary. Mr. Happy grinned again and went to put on the tea kettle. You get the thing. She says the opposite of what she means. After his tea, Mr. Happy took little Miss Contrary to meet some of his friends. He had to explain to them all that she was saying was the exact opposite of what she really meant. When she met Mr. Greedy, she looked at him and says, "Well, Aren't you thin? I'm telling you, some of the older people enjoy hearing this too, because I read it, believe it or not, to the nursing homes. You have a very short arm, she said to Mr. Tickles. Now, Mr. Tickles had the longest arms all over the place, but she told him, you have very short arms. Oh, I like your beard, she said to Mr. Fuzzy. Do you see any beard on Mr. Fuzzy? I think she meant to say she liked his goatee. Okay, well, she said eventually, thank you for the most perfect afternoon. Now I must go home before it gets light. Perfect? Asked Mr. Happy. Perfectly dreadful, she agreed, and off she went. I say, chuckled Mr. Greedy to Mr. Happy, you do know some funny people. You can say that again, laughed Mr. Happy. You do know some funny people, said Mr. Greedy. Mr. Happy grinned and went home. And these are the Mr. Greedy and Mr. Happy. Enjoying the story, my little babies? Okay. At home, Mr. Happy remembered the package little Miss Contrary had given him. It must be a birthday present, he said. So he hurried inside, and he opened up the present with a card. He opened the birthday card first. Inside it said, many miserable returns of the day. And would you like to know what the present was? A pair of socks. There he is going to his present. And it was a pair of socks. I'm telling you, your grandkids would love these stories. Well, I have to say, not quite a pair of socks. One sock was white, and the other sock was black. And as little Miss Contrary would say, that is the beginning of the story. So I hope you guys enjoyed Grandma reading Little Miss Contrary to you by Roger Hargreaves. And remember, I told you that you can also get his books, because my children love them at the school. You can always get his books at, I guess, any bookstore. But you can listen to them free on YouTube if you just put in his name, and that's it. Roger Hargreaves. I think he's passed on, and his wife is running the show now. Sometimes when you come on this YouTube, you can use it as a teaching machine also. So remember, I told you I'm not going to talk anymore about the killings in Chicago. I'm finished with that. They will continue. I'm not talking about gun control anymore, because you can't have gun control. You have to have people control. And I'm just going to use this as a teaching method for anybody that wishes to educate themselves, because many people have written me and they said, well, why you being a teacher for over, I guess I've been a teacher for over 60 years, 63, because I started when I was 7 years old. Could you show us some of the materials you used? Well, a lot of my materials I donated to the school. I still have a lot left, which on my passing, everything will go to the schools. Because right now I need materials for the volunteer work that I do. But I do pass out books to the children and adults. Because whether you know it or not, I tutor a lot of adults who do not know how to read. And it's nothing against them, but they just don't know how to read. I don't know what happened. So, but whatever you do, try to volunteer, like I told you, and help people and make this a better world. You know, Grandma's getting ready to leave you because I'm getting ready to go to Bali and I'm getting ready to go to Thailand, Chow Mein. But wherever I take my computer, you'll be with me. And I want you guys to play nice and be nice. And just know that Grandma loves you. I will love you forever and ever. And haven't lived 70 years to not know how to take care of myself. And I want you all to do the same thing. Take care of yourself. Remember that book, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? And one of us say play fair, be nice, flush. Some of those words, if you get a chance, review that book. Okay, have a good day.